The Department of Petroleum Resources has disclosed that if new crude oil discoveries are not made to add to Nigeria's current reserves of 36.971 billion barrels, the country will run out of oil in about 52 years. The DPR has explained that the current reserves depletion rate of Nigeria's oil reserves is 1.93%, adding that on the average, Nigeria produced 1.973.995 barrels of oil per day as at the end of June 2018. These details are contained in a report of the achievements of the agencies under the Ministry of Petroleum Resources in the last 3 years. The Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Dr. Ibe Kachiku, had recently launched the report. But this sounds pretty alarming, but to put it in context, it's not only Nigeria that faces our crude oil drying up. The whole world, as technology stands, as oil reserves currently stand, will be dry in 57 years.
Well, by then I'll be 100 and what? 120, whatever, you know. But that's not even the point. The truth is this. Maybe this is coming at the right time so we can reflect what the future is all about. Nobody needs oil anymore.
Exactly.
Anyway, please, let's check the 3 biggest companies in the world now. Amazon.
Maybe biggest 10, really.
10, exactly. You won't find any oil company there anymore, which was the case before. Yeah. It's all about technology and IT now. So we get to the program. In Europe now, everywhere you go, electric cars all over the place.
Yes.
At the worst, you get hybrids that combine both, maybe because they are still going through this. So what we need to do in Nigeria to make this very irrelevant, make the DPR not people we should even be listening to, whether they are there or not, we don't even care, is that we should go and fix our power infrastructure. Because we will be, as the Americans say, you know, that quote, I can't use it in air, I mean on the air, deep.
Up something.
You know,
without a paddle.
Exactly. If we do not fix power, and when oil goes, and there are electric cars everywhere, and we have all these cars, you know, these days in Lagos at 2:50 a.m., everywhere is blocked. There's traffic everywhere.
But it's just the season.
The bridge,
it's the season.
I don't know if it's the season. I just think it has to do with our politics, but that's another problem.
It's the season as well. That's what goes to the season.
Is particularly brutal, but traffic is the bane of the life of a Lagosian.
So it's take traffic as the bane of the life of a Lagosian. Layer politics plus layer Christmas season. Then you get what you have.
The underlining fact that you have made a sitting and performing government into a lame duck overnight, and these are the results you are seeing. Period. Take it from me.
Right. Okay.
That's not what we're
so what are your
about.
views on alternative energy, I mean?
No, but I think it's, I mean, we've been doing Nigeria Beyond Oil conferences for, I don't know, maybe the better part of the last 5 years.
Yes, we started it in Delta. I must say that.
What year was this?
Dr. Oduan was the proponent of Delta State Beyond Oil.
What year?
2011.
Okay, so some even longer, so 7 years.
Yes.
We've been talking about Nigeria Beyond Oil. But
yes.
Beyond, I think this administration's really push in terms of agriculture and that, I really don't see, to your point, really the sort of a comprehensive plan that really understands that as a reality. And for me, that really also goes back to our education sector. So there's one thing to recognize that you need to do things differently, but you also need to begin to raise a different generation of Nigerians that think differently and engage the world in a different way. And we're not, so it's not just talking about Delta Beyond Oil, but disregarding the fact that Delta's education system is a mess. It's all integrated, and so the same thing sort of scaled up to on a national level.
Well, it goes back to, you know, trying to just open up the economy.
Yeah.
Open up the economy, get other sources of
and then get
income.
people who are equipped to
human capital development, very important.
But even without this kind of report, I mean, we all watch the news. We see Venezuela, the danger of a mono economy. We all see it, and yet we continue. Look at this budget that the president just presented. The benchmark is oil production.
Yeah, because that's all we have, and that's all we rely on.
And unfortunately,
you know, we have to diversify.
We have to. But until we don't. So I think back to your point. We've been saying this thing for a while. I'm glad you brought it about 7 years. And it's election season. Until we begin to make these things front and center in our conversations around who's running for office and what do you plan to do, that's beyond I will build a borehole and I would whatever. I mean, the sort of the lame things that we throw out as election promises, so that we're interrogating those who want to lead at the national and subnational levels on some of these sort of more fundamental issues. Which is a good thing, that this is an election season. So hopefully we'll translate that beyond we should.
I agree.
And actually finally do something.
In total with you. I agree.
The Nigeria Labour Congress has said that it would embark on a nationwide mobilization of Nigerian workers to protest against federal government's delay in transmitting, enacting, and implementing a new national minimum wage of 30,000 naira. The NLC also urged the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission to investigate allegations of diversion of the bailout fund, the Paris Club refund, as well as all budget support releases to the states. In a swift reaction, the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, said that he was confident that Labour would not embarrass the government. NLC said that it had directed that protests be held in all state capitals and the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, on January 8, 2019. NLC has also added that all industrial unions and state councils had been directed to fully mobilize workers and coordinate with other labor unions for this mother of all protests. Wow.
Mother of all. Exactly. Why don't they call them father of all protests?
Because we all know that. We all know where the power is.
The female of the species is deadlier than the male.
God bless you. They are the neck that turn the head. Anyway.
So I guess they're not satisfied by the president's technical committee
they can't be
announced.
And so much is wrong. You know, like they say, you need two hands to clap. Right? You have the governors in the state and you have the president in the federal setup. Now we know a lot of governors are saying we cannot pay. Even that was why this Paris refunds and all these bailout funds have been coming to them. And even with that, we know so many states that are owing so much, you know, backlog of workers' salary. And then we're now saying, and these are salaries that cannot be called a living wage. I mean, what can 18,000 naira do for anyone?
It's shocking.
For one human being now? I don't think there's an Uber I will call that would have to take me back home now that I'm sure can tell me to pay 18,000 naira. So what are we saying? You know, so the truth is that we really have to sit down, and it comes back to the thing we were saying earlier on about this cutting cost, not just of governance, of everything we can. We have to get real. Those days, I think there were times when our past leaders have said what to do with money is a problem, and all that. We were throwing money away for that Christmas for Africa and all that, supporting all these liberation movements.
Oh, yeah, very important.
Yeah, which was good. But that time is long gone now. Yeah. And as they say, we have to get with the program and know what we are doing and really cut down on the cost of governance. And because these governors, look, they have even started calling out a few. I read somewhere where I think they've called Amosu's name and they've told the people and said, look, whatever you do, vote these people out that cannot do it. And it's not just him. You know, they've called, I can't remember, but I know they've called about 4 or 5 governors. And whether we like it or not, this is going to backfire on them or at the polls. So I think that the president coming out to say another technical committee will
after the tripartite committee and all the back and forth, then another committee.
Is this world without end?
By the way, while we're trying to look for money.
Is this world without end? You know, there must be an end. Even litigation, anything, the world safe. Though we pray world without end, I'm sure there's a day to get to
end.
Exactly.
But I think for me,
Jesus Christ will come.
What's important for me is the Labour Congress now talking about investigating the governance. I mean, that's been my bane of contention with them for a while, that you talk about living wage, using this opportunity elections, smart from a protest point of view, to sort of push for your demands at 30,000. But first of all, 30,000 in Lagos is very different than 30,000 in Taraba. So the fact that we have a national living wage is even a problem to start with. But over the course of this administration, there's been Paris Club refund, there have been bailout funds that several state governments have taken a part of. And it's those state governments that reports have shown did not use the monies for what they were supposed to. So Mr. President gave those monies on the condition that you would use it to clear your backlog in salary as you readjust. I think part of it was actually repackaging their debt at lower interest rates so that they could free up some money to pay workers. So I'm glad the Labour Congress is now talking about these issues, because ultimately it goes back to this issue of accountability. If you do not hold people accountable for monies that they have or ask questions, then you can't just then suddenly decide you want to protest. If within states, Ogun, you mentioned, the workers in Ogun that consistently hold Governor Musu accountable, it will be a very different conversation. And because this is an election season, I think just as talking about our options beyond oil, around wages, around the size of government must be part of the issues that we discuss. So people who want to lead come to the table with clear plans. I mean, you need to be clear that, look, we have a workforce of 30,000 or, I don't know, 100,000 people. We cannot afford it based on where we are now. These are the plans, or this is what I think we can do, either in increasing IGR or in structuring government differently. But these things need to be stated so people are clear that you're going into government thinking about them.
You see, you made a point now. You talked about holding the government accountable, the labor unions and all that. You see, with the kind of pervasive poverty we have in Nigeria, that's almost impossible. Because even these unions
they're not getting paid.
Yeah,
so what do you have to lose?
It doesn't matter. You call them to a room somewhere and you settle them Nigerian way. You know, all that.
No, but that's my point.
Yeah,
no. And that's my point around responsibility. So responsibility is not one-sided.
No, it's
exactly. So let's be very clear about what it is we're talking about.
That is why the government should be what it is. The government, the father of the people. They should be the one that should deal with the people in good faith.
But we've seen that they lack interest. But they lack the interest or willingness. So therefore, so it's not. And I guess back to this point about beyond oil.
Your PVC,
we've seen
exactly.
We've seen that they don't want to or unwilling to. Then the demand must be made on them. Simple.
Yes.
I mean, governance is a demand and supply game. If you don't demand, they will supply you rubbish. And we cannot continue to expect them to, out of the goodness of their heart, or assume they have some sense to do the right thing.
So we have a responsibility, same as the leaders do.
Yeah. Definitely.
On that note, we'll go for a short break here on This Day Live, the Sunday talk show.